You make tiny, small, incremental changes every single day, sustained over a period of time, which will bring you monumental results. I grabbed onto that like a drowning man seizes a life preserver. I was like, wow, I'm old, but I'm going to guess that 20 years from now, I'm going to realize how young I am right now, even though I think I'm old. So why don't I just start making tiny little incremental changes, practice on a daily basis, and just continue to do that?
Welcome to the Stay Grounded podcast. I'm your host, Raj Jana, co-founder at Liberate, and it's my mission to help you become the most grounded, loving, and authentic version of yourself that you can be. Each week, I interview guests in the fields of mindset, spirituality, and emotional well-being. My brilliant guests share their tools, tips, and unique perspectives to help you develop the skills you need to show up for the people that matter most in your life. Now let's dive in. Yo, what's up, everyone? And welcome to this incredibly illustrious storytelling-esque episode with my new friend, Mr. Khalil.
Thank you.
So Khalil is the founder of SunLife Organics. He's a serial entrepreneur and one of the most interesting people I've ever had the pleasure of interviewing, actually. We went in so many directions, everything from Khalil's upbringing inside of turbulent households to his journey through recovery and addiction to finding entrepreneurship to accessing God to building the simple habits of being present inside of difficult life experiences to learning how to peel the onion off and feel your feelings and process the depths of shame and sadness that are present inside of the inner work. I mean, it was a conversation that went in so many different directions. Khalil is such a brilliant storyteller. And he has such an ability to, for every lesson we want to teach, bring it back to a story from his life. And it's very rare that I get to meet somebody who's so dynamic in the ways that they weave life lessons with stories. And so I hope you guys enjoy this conversation. He's the best-selling author of multiple books, including I Forgot to Die and Remembering to Live, and he's working on his third book right now. And I just really adore the man, and I'm excited for you guys to get to know him. So without further ado, here is the amazing Mr. Khalil. Enjoy. Khalil, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Raj. Thank you.
Oh, it's so good to have you here, man. I just love your energy. It's like the first thing I actually picked up on when we talked on the phone, just how authentic and radically expressed and just unapologetically you are. And right before we started this recording, you shared a little story, and you mentioned the actual phrase, I don't really know how to be anything other than what I am.
Yeah.
When did you begin being yourself?
Early on, very, very early on, when I was a child, and often got me in a lot of trouble and laughed at or ridiculed, but I never hesitated to just be myself. I really feel like my heart's virtue is pure, authentic self-expression. But then school started, and then, society and indoctrination and religion and like all that weird stuff did its best to beat it out of me. So there was unfortunately a period where I pretended to be many other people. And I spent years trying to pretend like I was cool. I spent a lot of years trying to pretend, and I'm not cool, by the way, at all. Very dorky, very just no filter. But I spent many, many years trying to pretend that I was tough. That was a big one for me. I really lifted weights, and I, tried different forms of, I don't want to say training in martial arts because that sounds like it's fancier than it was, but I was really into presenting myself to the world in a way where I would be feared as a man. As a young boy, this started, 12 years old, 13 years old. And then, the emo depressive type, and then there was many different incarnations of what I thought maybe would please my father and ultimately get his approval, or please my mother, or I would pretend to be somebody when I was trying to date a woman, a girl, you know, as in my teens, in my 20s, borrowing heavily from different characters that I saw, the James Deans and the Mickey Rourkes, and those movies shaped me. Society shaped me, the magazine shaped me, but they shaped me into something that I wasn't. And I was always miserable, really, really miserable, and really lost and empty. And I could never hold down a job. I could never keep a relationship together because I was completely full of shit. I was trying to be somebody else, which was like looking back at, like, it breaks my heart. Like, all I had to do was be myself.
Well, and when did that journey of kind of coming back home, like what sparked it? Was it a rock bottom moment? Was it a spiritual experience? Was it like a relationship breakup? Like, what was the catalyst that kind of just made you go, all right, I'm done not being me anymore?
I became fascinated with the book Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse when I was in my early to mid 20s. And so fascinated that I even became fascinated with Hermann Hesse himself, and not just read Siddhartha, but also then read about the making of Siddhartha and how he literally went completely insane and ended up leaving his family and like moving into a sanitarium in order to finish the book. And similar, you know, I think The Alchemist kind of borrowed similar themes, you know, that hero's journey, which I didn't know I was taking. I remember watching PBS would often have Joseph Campbell on there, and he would have this thing called The Hero's Journey, and it was kind of interesting, but it kind of was like over my head. I didn't realize I was like knee deep in the hero's journey. And so I really began seeking and searching. And sometimes it was like searching for God, and sometimes it was searching for myself. And then something really interesting happened, because inwardly and sometimes in conversation, I would say to people, well, you know, look at the Buddha, look at Siddhartha. I mean, how lucky can you get? Because he ultimately lost everything. And when you lose everything, then you can truly see things as they are. Right? Oof. If you, the instruction is, you must lose all preconceived notions. How in the is a young man going to lose all preconceived notions when he's measured by how much he benches and how much money he has and what kind of watch he has and what kind of car he drives? I was stuck in that momentum, but so envious of Siddhartha, so envious of the boy in The Alchemist. Well, be careful what you wish for, kids. What started out as partying, I had always done drugs. I had always really had alcoholic and addictive tendencies, but I was also incredibly vain. So there would be periods of abstinence because I didn't want to look bad, and I didn't want to look bad in front of other people. So if I blacked out and did something really stupid, that would scare me straight for a while. But in the mid 90s, I started hanging out with some girls, and they were doing a bunch of ecstasy, and they were taking me to raves, and they would dress me up. And I mean, the honeymoon period was unbelievable. You know, probably 3 years of just, you could do no wrong. You couldn't, you know, everything was okay. And the guy liner and the platinum hair and the fur coats and dressing up like a woman sometimes, and just going out into this crazy club world, raves, after hours, more and more drugs, more and more drugs. At that point, I think I was at a place called Blue in Hollywood, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. At that point, I have no idea why, but somebody handed me this book called Das Energy, and I was lit. I was higher than a kite. And
at 3 or 4 in the morning.
Yes. Oh, and had been up for days.
I mean, like, someone passed you that book at 3 or 4 in the morning.
At an after-hours club. To this day, I will never know why this girl handed me that book.
That's epic. Okay, all right.
Das Energy. And it was about spirituality and about God and about self and about seeking. And it was kind of like a breakthrough. And then another friend of mine, within a few days of getting that first book, that was like my first little taste of like what is actually going on, what is real, right? Within a few days of that, my yogi buddy Sean handed me the book Notes of a Madman, which was Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, who they now today call Osho, so they can, I guess, sell books, because Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh developed a really bad reputation. But he handed me the book Notes of a Madman, and holy shit. I mean, between DOS Energy and Notes of a Madman, all of a sudden it was just like, wait, what is life? What am I doing? And now I'm 27, you know, I was 26, 27 years old. What am I doing? I was in a rock and roll band, running around with all these girls, living my life without a moral compass. Everything was just hedonistic and for pleasure. And I will give you the shortened, abridged version, but the drugs became more and more. What started out as partying on the weekends turned into partying from Thursday to Sunday, and then Wednesday to Sunday, and then eventually the drugs took over. And eventually, much like those characters in those books, I lost everything. I don't mean kind of, sort of. I don't mean like I went back home to my parents' house. They're you know, they were in Ohio, I was in California. I don't mean I crashed on my friend's sofa for a while. I lost everything. I burned every bridge that I had ever come to. And the fun, cool, interesting drugs in the mid to later 90s, as it turned towards the 2000s, became heroin and crack, and then injecting heroin and cocaine. And once I had crossed that invisible line, I didn't care about anything. I didn't care about anyone. I was going to shoot to death's door every moment of every day, and I didn't give a fuck about anybody else.
Tell me about how you were dancing with death. Like, did those moments define a relationship to death or dying, or like how does that experience or that time period of your life actually shape the way that you see dying and death?
Well, those books in particular, the Das Energy and Notes of a Madman, which led to many, many other books, kind of opened up my eyes to the fact that, like, this never is going to end. This has been going on forever. And my little pea brain cannot wrap itself around that, but there is no beginning and there is no end. Unfortunately, I took advantage of that, and I'm embarrassed to say that. And it's not something that I really ever talk about. I don't know if I've ever talked about it on a podcast, for sure. I felt that our creator, God, whatever that means, was protecting me. And I took advantage of that. I behaved in ways that were insane. I did really, really stupid shit, risking my life. And I say that in quotation marks because I never felt like, oh, I'm going to die and then that's it. And then there's just darkness. I certainly wasn't buying into like, oh, well, if I'm good and then I die, then I go up to this place called heaven and then I get to see, you know, maybe meet my mother that I never got to meet. I wasn't thinking like that. I just was like hedonistic, narcissistic, self-indulgent, and behaving so recklessly. And the people around me were so scared.
So did you feel like you just weren't afraid of death? Did you just not like what was the, and the reason I ask, let me just give you context, because I feel like, and I've been looking at this in my own life, like as my relationship to death has evolved, my ability to stay grounded, stay resilient, to stay calm, to stay connected in the face of any level of adversity has evolved as well. Yeah. And I feel like those moments where we're either pushed to the brink of dying or we have some type of experiences that transform our relationship to death, transform our relationship to the way that we live our lives.
There are no free lunches. Fast forward to about a year and a half later, we were running around with we'll leave names out of it, but a pretty famous actor, and a lot of crack, a lot of heroin, a lot of cocaine. And that same girlfriend had taken off on the back of that guy's motorcycle. They like sped off, and I was like, I'll show her that, that whatever. And I just mixed up the biggest batch. I didn't have any cocaine. They had the cocaine. I mixed up the biggest, thickest, blackest batch of heroin and drew it up into a needle. I knew exactly what I was doing. And I was like, I'm going to show her. I'm going to show all of them. Just the epitome of selfishness and narcissism and just pathetic, loathsome human being. And I shot it all into my arm.
Wow.
And for the first time, that arrogance of, the invincibility of my youth all of a sudden evaporated as I realized that I was dead. I died, and I floated above my body, and we were at this guy Mintern's house, and I remember watching him find me because I was making aspirating sounds, I think he said, like foaming and aspirating. He kept hovering over me and doing weird, and I'm watching, and I was like, oh, I'm dead. And then I was like, oh my God, I'm dead. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, I'm dead. Oh my God, oh my God. That's all. I just kept saying that over and over again, like, oh my God, I'm dead. And I was in darkness, and it was freezing, and I was watching all this go down. And I was like, oh my God, I'm dead. Oh my God, I'm dead. Oh my God. I just kept saying that over and over again. And then the next thing you know, you see the paramedics come in, and they're hovering over my body. And then all of a sudden, just this intense pain. And boom, I open my eyes, and I'm like, I'm back in my body, and I'm looking around. I'm like, what the oh my God, oh my God. And then I start going back, and I'm literally listening to them going, we're losing him. They had the defibrillator on me. And again, back into the darkness. And how many times that went back and forth, I don't remember, but I definitely remember like I was dead and I intentionally took my life. I would not suggest to anyone ever to take your own life. Ever, under any circumstances, do not kill yourself. Nothing comes for free. Just as my arrogance and my hubris when I was shooting the ecstasy and behaving like an idiot and driving 120 miles an hour through the desert on the way to a rave or whatever, nothing comes for free. There's no free lunches. We pay for everything ultimately. And there was a lot involved in that, and it's all in my book. They eventually stabilized me. They eventually got me into an ambulance. But the entire ride, the entire 20-mile ride from Malibu to St. John's Hospital in Santa Monica, I think they must have lost me another few times, at least 2 times. And the woman that was holding my hand, she kept saying, like, stay with me, stay with me. They had the oxygen mask on me. They had already hit me with the Norcan. But because I had done so much heroin, it wasn't looking good. It wasn't looking like, like I was going to come out of this. And she just kept saying, stay with me, think positive thoughts, think positive thoughts. And I find I'm like looking at this beautiful woman who's so selflessly being a paramedic. And I'm this pathetic piece of fake wannabe rock star in some fake band that's not even really a band. It's just a bunch of famous people's children, amazing musicians who are now doing amazing things. I'm not belittling them, but it was just like so stereotypical of me.
Yeah, you had a true awakening moment.
Yeah.
You saw yourself.
I saw myself. I was borrowing from their
Yeah.
talent and second generation fame. And I'm looking at this beautiful woman, and she keeps saying, like, stay with me, think positive thought, think positive thoughts, think positive thoughts. And I'm looking at her, and finally I'm just like, like trying to talk. I had the oxygen mask on, and she's like, I don't understand. And I like reach up and I like pull it off, and I said, there aren't none. And she just started crying. She's crying. I'm crying. We had this moment. obviously I lived. They got me to St. John's Hospital. They stabilized me.
Wow.
It was horrible. The way they treat somebody that overdosed on drugs, and I don't blame them, by the way, but you realize without the dope in your system, like what a piece of shit you are and how you have been behaving, because they don't really care that you're uncomfortable. They don't care that you want this or you want water, you want whatever. And I finally was just like, hey, man, obviously I've had a rough night. And this doctor was like, listen, there are people in that other room that are struggling for their lives. And you're doing this with yourself. It was just like, it was a talking to that I did not want to have.
This was the turning moment in many ways.
That was the beginning of the bottoming out. I would love to tell you that, I got clean and sober after that and everything was okay, but there was more jails, there was more hospitalizations, there was more seizures, there was a lot that went into that. And if somebody's that interested, they can read my horrific bestselling memoir. It's called I Forgot to Die.
When did you transition into this world of wellness? Like, I'm very curious, like how you went from this place of like rock bottom death to like, was it through a desire to heal the body? Was it through spirituality? Like, was it like, what do you even like how did you transition into this?
I mean, all of the above, really. But the what ended up happening was there were no worldly possessions. There was nothing. I had nothing. I was less than zero. Like my mother was living below the level of poverty. My father, as he famously, he's gone now, but as he said at that time, if I find this piece of shit, I will kill him with my own hands to stop him from poisoning my bloodline. Like there was no like going to my dad or going to my mom or going like there was nothing. Musicians Assistance Program put me into a treatment center, thank God, and then a halfway house and all that stuff. But there was nothing. So, the whole like you have to lose all your preconceived notions. Well, they were gone. All my preconceived notions were gone. It was me at 33 years old coming to the realization that I was an absolute worthless piece of shit. A selfish, worthless piece of shit, and had completely wasted my life wearing all these different masks for all these different people in hopes that at some point I could take from them something that would make me feel whole. What a lie. What a lie. So that was the stripping away of everything where I could actually begin to see.
Yeah. What does sight mean to you?
To observe without the clouds, without the distractions, without the ego, without all of that stupid shit that I was so disillusioned with. And learning to like go to these 12-step meetings, and like I had a sponsor who was letting me crash at his place. I was homeless, so I couldn't really negotiate things too well back then. But like my sponsor was telling me that I had to go and take my own money and buy cookies and treats for the 12-step meeting that we were going to go to, and I had to get there an hour early. And I was just like, man, are you kidding me? Bunch of fucking losers, bunch of like weird old stinky men. And he's just like, go. It's your commitment. That's what you are doing from here on out. You have the cookie and cake commitment. And so I did that, and it was at a place in the valley. And first few times I fucking hated it. I'm like, my life sucks. I'm 34. I was 33, 34, turning 34. And, but all of a sudden when I began to see, you'd watch these guys come in from the Salvation Army that had nothing, and they would see these cookies, and I would get the fancy cookies because I'm pretentious and I like fancy shit. I didn't get the gross stuff. I bought the fancy stuff. Sometimes I brought strawberries. Sometimes I brought blueberries. Sometimes I brought pizza. Sometimes I brought Coca-Cola. And I would sit in the back of the room, and nobody knew I brought it because I got there early, like my sponsor told me to. And I watched the look on these guys' faces, the joy, the happiness that it brought them. And I began at that time tithing. I think the Christians call it tithing, where you're like, giving part of your earnings to people who are less fortunate than you. My sponsor also taught me that. So I began to see that being of service could be kind of cool. Felt kind of neat. They didn't know why I was doing it, so it was anonymous. I tried the whole like sponsoring people and all that. I wasn't very good at that stuff, but I was really good at like nurturing people and feeding people and seeing people and complimenting people. And that was kind of the foundation for the spirituality component. Now, the nutritional component, I was just broke. So I reached back out to that same friend, Sean, who had cleaned up and sobered up on his own through yoga, breath work, meditation, all that. He didn't go to rehab. He just stopped. He's much stronger than me. And I was like, hey, man, he was one of the few people that would still take my phone calls because nobody else would. And I said, hey, man, I'm starving. I'm crashing at this dude's house. I'm hungry. I don't have any money, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, give me the address. He showed up. We tried to do some yoga. I couldn't. I was just so banged up. But he brought me mason jars of juice. He brought me macadamia nuts and made me a little smoothie and brought that in a mason jar and nurtured me like a mother bird. And then he massaged me.
Oh,
He's a masseuse. He massaged me and we laughed and we cried. I dropped the masks. I dropped my guard and I said, like, Sean, like, I'm totally I got nothing. I'm like massively in debt. My credit is destroyed. I'm a convicted felon. I'm a high school dropout. I'm 34 years old. And he would crack a joke and then we would laugh more and then we would eat more berries and nuts. And that was the beginning. That's how I started getting into it, was with my friend Sean. I started doing the greens powder and I started eating the nuts and he brought me avocados and I started putting that stuff in my body and I started feeling so good as the life force began to enter my body. And then I started to expel like nasty, gross bile and all kinds of stuff, and then put more stuff, healthy stuff in and more life force, and then getting out in the sun. And eventually it got to the point where I became obsessed with these superfoods, with maca, with cacao beans. I'm talking 21 years ago. Nobody was talking about maca and goji berries and colostrum. Nobody was talking about colostrum back then. In fact, 13 years ago when we first opened, I had a smoothie, the $1 Million smoothie with colostrum in it, and people were horrified. I got shamed for putting colostrum in my smoothies. But back then, we were going to this like secret gray market underground place called Rawsome, and we were buying raw colostrum from the Amish and raw butter, and we were taking bison liver and we were blending it up with honey and berries and raw cream, and we would drink these smoothies. And remember, I was 109 pounds when I finally put down the spoon and picked up the fork, metaphorically speaking. I was 109 pounds. I'm 172 pounds now.
Wow.
And I'm ripped. I'm in the best shape of my life at 55 years old.
So I don't want to speak to that too, like, because I see the nourishing of the physical body.
Yeah.
Like, how does the mind play into the journey of becoming your most liberated, well self in your world? Like, what is the journey of that? Like, is it that you had this near-death experience and then all of a sudden you saw clearly and that you just stuck the landing and now you're just seeing clearly for the rest of your life? Or are there things that you do to keep yourself in a state of positivity and vibrancy? And how do you look at all the aspects that are holding you inside of cycles of shame or regret? Like, how do you practice emotional hygiene?
Wow, there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, go whatever direction you want to go. Just throw them all at you.
I always assumed wrongly that life was a sprint. And so I failed at everything. I dropped out of high school. I was terrible at sports. I had no talent, still have no talent other than the ability to run through walls. And it wasn't a near-death experience. It was a death experience.
It was a death experience.
Yeah, I died.
Okay.
That was so, you want to talk about terror? That's terror. That was terror. Absolute darkness was terror. I always thought that life was a sprint. And when Tim Ferriss wrote his book and he talked about Kaizen and how the Japanese eventually overcame us in terms of manufacturing automobiles, and they did it through this process that they called Kaizen, I was fascinated because I remember it happening because I lived right below Detroit, Motor City, you know? In the 70s, Japanese cars were a joke. In the 80s, you were a loser if you didn't drive a Japanese car. How did that happen? It happened through Kaizen. And it was this concept that you make tiny, small, incremental changes every single day, sustained over a period of time, which will bring you monumental results. I grabbed onto that like a drowning man seizes a life preserver. I was like, wow, I'm old, but I'm going to guess that 20 years from now, I'm going to realize how young I am right now, even though I think I'm old. So why don't I just start making tiny little incremental changes, practice on a daily basis, and just continue to do that? And then I read the book, The Power of Habit, which was way over my head. I think I only made it through a third of it, but I was reading Psycho-Cybernetics at the same time. I was always really insecure about being dumb, because I was always told I was dumb and I had learning disabilities. So I had a voracious appetite to learn. And Psycho-Cybernetics coupled with The Power of Habit ingrained in me, along with the Kaizen that Tim Ferriss introduced me to, that everything is, like our whole life is really just about our habits. Like we think that we're these like giant intellectual beings. And let me speak for myself. I'm not. I'm just a conglomeration of my daily habits. So if every day I'm putting good stuff into my body and I'm putting good thoughts into my body and I'm exercising and I'm saving money and I'm investing money and I'm being kind to people, it doesn't mean I'm not going to break a leg. It doesn't mean a parent's not going to die. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to fall on hardships. It doesn't mean that bad shit's not going to happen. But if I continue to do little tiny positive incremental changes, practice over a sustained period of time, then eventually monumental results are going to happen. And they happened, like in a big, big way.
My belief system is that, our awareness, our consciousness is our greatest asset.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so like when we can learn to activate our awareness and awaken our consciousness, we can actually make more empowered choices, do everything we need to do in our lives. And it's usually the thing that actually pulls us out of that misery.
Right.
You had a death experience,
yes,
that gave you that sight. But
yes,
for those that aren't having a death experience, what message would you have for them to wake up?
God, if they're young, if they're your age, I mean, do something radical. Go somewhere. Go. What's the crazy walk that people do? That spiritual walk.
The one in Spain?
Yeah,
I don't know what's
like
called.
The road to whatever.
Yeah.
Go do something like that. Like go volunteer for a year somewhere. Start a business. Write a book. Start a band. Just fucking go for it. Make mistakes. Continue to try. In terms of like where I am now, having peeled back so many different layers of the onion and finally being present and finally being able to see things clearly, that took escaping Maslow's hierarchy. That really did.
Yeah, and so peeling back the layers, we're allowing all those emotions to flow and allowing those ouchies to be seen and witnessed and held and liberated in many ways from your being. What was that journey like for you? Was it easy? Was it something that you had to learn? Can you speak to like the journey of going within for you?
I mean, it started in 12 steps. I remember being in rehab and they were talking about you're going to do these steps and then you're going to write down, the people that you've harmed, or you're going to make amends to them. And I was just like, you're going to write down your resentments or whatever. And I was like, that. Like, that's why I did drugs, was so I didn't have to face any of that shit. And they were just like, yeah, this is real life, son. You're not going to just walk around anesthetized for the rest of your life. Like, this is real life now. You need to like get in touch with, where is all your pain coming from? Well, that's easy. Abandonment. Okay, well, what do you mean by abandonment? Well, I always get abandoned, and we got to write that shit down. So working with my sponsor 8 months later, I thought that all of my using was over because I was abandoned. My mother abandoned me. I told her that my much older sibling, 8 years older, had been molesting me, and my mother said, he's just tickling you, and she shooed me away. And she paid attention to my father, and she didn't pay attention to me as a child. So I had empirical evidence that I wasn't lovable, that I was worthless. So I was abandoned. And then, Kim, my girlfriend, when I was in grade school, she abandoned me. And then, Corey, my other girlfriend, she abandoned me. And Jamie Barber, yeah, she abandoned me. Like, she would never talk to me again. Like, she left. Like, she broke up with me and she abandoned me. My sponsor, just being great, and I'm sure God was intervening, he said, what was your part? I'm like, what do you mean? They abandoned me. Like, I wanted love, and I'm unlovable, and so they abandoned me. And he's like, you had no part in it? And I'm like, no. He goes, did you ever call them names? Like, cuss at them? I'm like, what do you mean? Yeah, you sure what? He goes, yeah, like that. I'm like, yeah, Robbie, of course I did. He goes, you did? I said, yeah. I probably all of them. Shut the fuck up. You shut your. He goes, that's how you talk to them. I'm like, yeah, Robbie, that's how I talk to them. You got a problem with that? Right? The masks, the ego. He says, did you ever cheat on them? And I'm like, dude, what kind of a question is that? Yeah, of course I cheated on them. All men cheat. He goes, all men cheat? I said, yeah, all men cheat. He goes, all men. I'm like, dude, don't be a men cheat. That's what men do. Men cheat. He goes, really? I said, yes, 1,000% men cheat. That's what men do. He goes, I don't. I was like, really? He goes, no. Oh. And he goes, did you ever hit him? I'm like, come on, man. What the why are you interrogating me? We want to talk about my feelings, my abandonment. No, of course I never hit them. He goes, you never hit them. I said, no, I never hit. I mean, I slapped them, but I'm never like hit them like my dad used to hit my mom. He goes, you slapped them. I said, yeah, I slapped them. Or I pushed them a couple of times. And he's fucking tearing up. He literally had tears in his eyes. He's just looking at me. And I'm like, what? I thought we were talking about my feelings, my abandonment. Like, I'm starting to like panic. And he's like, Khalil. He goes, they didn't abandon you. They escaped. And as I crumbled, he was like, don't ever, under any circumstances, lay a hand on a girl. You are not to push a woman. You are not to slap. You are not allowed to do anything. Do not ever scream at them and call them names. Ever. Because you claim that you love them. You didn't. You loved yourself and you loved them being around for you. But you didn't love them. Because if you love a woman, you don't call her, you don't call her names, you don't scream at her. And I was just like, it felt like somebody was like throwing hot, like boiling water on my skin as he was telling me all this. You are never to cheat, ever. How would you feel if your girlfriend cheated on you? I'm like, that's gross. Like, I don't want to talk about it. I'm like crying now. And he's like, no. How would you feel? And I'm like, I would obviously feel terrible. And he goes, how do you think they felt? So he shattered my illusions, and he got me to begin to peel back the big, thick layers of the onion. I was literally like mentally handicapped. I was shaped by society, by the wise guys that I grew up around, the Detroit mob, and how they infiltrated Toledo. And these men would have their wives, and then Saturday nights they would have their girlfriends. And all the men that I knew growing up, they cheated. All the men I knew growing up, they slapped their wives, or worse. All the men that I knew growing up screamed at their wives, called them names. That's what I witnessed. So I assumed that that's how life was. And when I watched the movies, by the way, all those movies that Hollywood made, 9.5 Weeks, Porky's, Caddyshack, Animal House, how we degraded women, how we were so disrespectful to women, how we cheated on them and then glorified that cheating. And then even if you think today about rap music and slap this is from my white and this, like, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So big, ugly, leathery layers of the onion were first peeled back in 12-step programs.
Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing that and for bringing us into that experience. Because I think when we start to unravel ourselves, there's so much shame.
Yeah.
And,
there was.
And that's what I want to bring light to, because a big part of what I believe, what was the name of that individual who helped you?
Robbie.
One of the gifts I think Robbie gave you was in many ways witnessing. He was a firm, stern witness, but he still allowed you the space to bring out forth. And then when you cracked and you saw yourself and you shattered, he probably held you and he probably put that loving awareness in that. And I think that's what's in some ways missing in society. We hold so many grudges or judgments, but I've always felt like if we just allowed a space for safe expression, we can truly begin to heal as a community and really begin to unlayer some of these layers of the onion in a way that actually empowers us to be better human beings.
Yeah. I didn't have access. I didn't have access to that. I was talking about this morning. I remember, this is like 13 years ago, I met this guy, Ingo Rademacher. He was on General Hospital for many, many years until the cancel culture police came after him for questioning the vaccine. But Ingo Rademacher sat at my table every day and we would talk about life, and he was married and he had kids and whatever. And I remember this like it was yesterday. He said, I was like, wait, how long have you been with her? And he's, whatever, however many years it was, 10 years or whatever. And I'm like, and you're not like freaked out about the fact that you can never be with another woman again? And he just looked at me and he's like, are you kidding right now? And I'm like, no, I'm asking you honestly. And he's like, Khalil, that's the whole point. I don't want to be with any other woman. That's my wife. That's my everything. I want to be with my wife. You have an amazing girlfriend. You want to go be with other women? And I said, I do. He goes, you might want to rethink that relationship. And like, it was so shocking and weird to hear stuff like that from real men. There are real men out there. There's a lot of them, by the way. Austin has a ton of them. Justin Donald, who was brought up earlier. I love that dude. I look up to that guy. Cal Callahan, Michael Swale, Gino. I've met all these amazing married men that I didn't have access to when I lived in Malibu and I lived in California. These are like married men, church on Sunday, faithful, loving, like Ingo and his family. Like it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful, but we've lost our way because my generation, and certainly your generation, my generation was the first generation that grew up without God. It's the first generation. Generation X is the first generation to grow up without God. If I had been born in a previous generation, I would have been going to church or going to temple or going to mosque or going to whatever it was. There was God. And when there's God, God is the foundation of everything. Talking about the death experience and the darkness and the cold, that was the absence of God. Death is the absence of God. It's the ultimate absence of God. God is light. Then there's the darkness, the absence of that light. And we've gotten away from the light. We've gotten away from God. And we need to get back to God. And again, it's easy for me to sit here and, pontificate about the virtues of building a relationship with my Creator, with the abundance that I've created, and the sort of look. I could walk out the door and get hit by a bus and die, but in general, like, I'm building my dream home right now. I'm with a woman that I've been with for 9 years who I have never raised my voice to, ever. I've never screamed at my girlfriend. I have never cheated on my girlfriend. I have never insulted my girlfriend with caustic, visceral, nasty names. Now, I look at other women all the time. We were talking about that when we first sat down before we started the podcast. Your friend Nancy, she's a beautiful woman. I'm obsessed with feminine energy and beauty. And your friend Nancy was walking past me in the gym, and I pet her dog, broke the ice, started talking to her. We had an amazing conversation, which is how I met you. I don't think I'm ever going to lose the desire to look at beauty and to look at beautiful women and to get a charge from that. However, we are no longer hunters and gatherers. I can admire Nancy. I can even, if it's appropriate, if there's no wedding ring on there, I can even, check out the butt, check out the boobs, whatever. Be respectful. If there's a wedding ring, no, it's not okay. That's somebody's wife. But I won't be with another woman behind my wife's back. Maybe someday she'll grant me the hall pass. One can only hope or wish or dream. But I won't do that, not because I'm a good guy, but because you're not supposed to. You're not supposed to. Like things like pornography, like you're not supposed to look at that shit. It's not good. That's not of God. And I'm not saying that for your audience. I'm saying that for me.
What is God for you?
The creator. God created all of this. And we are a particle of that. And God is experiencing God through us and through the little particles that we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And do you have an active relationship to, do you feel like God is something outside of you or it's something within you?
It's all in the same. I mean, the kingdom of heaven is within, is often said, but the kingdom of heaven is also without. I mean, look at a sunset or a sunrise.
Yeah.
Look at a beautiful wave or ride a beautiful wave. Look into a baby's eyes. That's all God. The space in between you and I is God. But God is something that I can't articulate properly because we're not supposed to be able to comprehend it and grasp the vastness of eternity, right? If we all knew definitively that there was a God and that you should behave properly, and as I was saying earlier, which probably pissed some people off, you're not supposed to look at pornography. When I say you're not supposed to look at pornography, I mean I'm not supposed to look at pornography. If you guys look at pornography, good for you. It doesn't serve me, and I don't think it's serving the people that are doing it. So, but if I knew definitively, which I kind of feel like I do, but it's still faith, right? Until I take that final breath, I won't know for sure. Now, if I'm wrong, I got to build this incredible life based on a false premise, and the false premise ended up to be wrong. Who cares? I'll be dead.
Well, what's beautiful about this whole journey of this conversation is I've seen, we started out this conversation by, when did you begin the journey of being you? And what I'm realizing in all these moments where you made micro choices in each of these moments, in the moment where the onion was coming off, like you could have fought, but you allowed yourself to see yourself in the moments that you were even getting into the wellness, like everything, like these micro choices and these micro habits and these micro opportunities to see, you chose to. And I think that's a beautiful thing, Khalil. And I feel like that's something that's so important to highlight because we all have choices that we get to make in those moments
every day.
And we all make mistakes.
Yeah.
And we all have the opportunity to see ourselves from an honest light and then make different choices moving forward. And so I just want to thank you for bringing light to that important principle as somebody who's gone through so many different cycles of life.
Yeah, lots.
I mean, it's insane, man. And to see you here and to feel your energy and to feel how alive and excited you are about the present moment and your wife and the men's communities that you're here in Austin with. And it's a really beautiful thing. And so I just want to, again, thank you for being here and for bringing so much,
of course,
like storytelling.
Of
I
course.
was hanging out here. I was like, man, I don't want to say a thing. I just want to let Khalil run.
I'm a little long in the tooth, and I have to say that, you know, I'm incredibly blessed by God for sure. But I'm also blessed by the, you know, I'm a conglomeration of my habits, but I also surround myself with incredible people. And I've been blessed to, you know, I opened my business in Malibu, California.
Yeah, talk a little about SunLife. I actually want to like tie it in because I don't even think we touched on SunLife at all.
Sure. Well, no, I was just thinking of like how blessed am I to know Rick Rubin and to be able to text him and to ask him a question and to get an answer back. Like, you know, Rick Rubin walked into my business and he didn't know me from Adam. And he literally just walked right in, stared right into my soul, and he goes, "You should meditate." And I was like, "I should?" And he didn't answer. And I'm like, "Really? Like, I should meditate? Like, is it obvious? Do I seem like crazy to you or whatever?" And he's just staring and he doesn't say a word. And then he like takes a smoothie and he looks at me again and he goes, "You should meditate." And he walked out the door. And I was like, what the f-? Within, I think, a week, I had signed up for a TM course and, you know, began that journey. Amazing. I met some amazing musicians and traveled around the world with them when they were on tour. I met some amazing actors. I met a lot of really creative billionaires. There's 18 locations across the country now. I started the business on a shoestring and a prayer. I borrowed money from a guy that you would definitely not want to not pay back. That would have been very bad for me had I not paid this guy back. But I didn't have a business plan. I don't have any credentials. He had saw me working really hard, but I had no business plan. I had no projection. I had nothing. I just, you know, when I was telling you about Sean giving me the juices and the smoothies and the not vitamin mineral greens, but the Pure Synergy powder, and how the life force began to flow into me. So my previous business was Riviera Recovery, which was amazing, which I also started on a shoestring and a prayer, and that was amazing. But I hated it because I was helping people, trying to help people with addiction. And what I found out the hard way is most people don't want to change. Most. Like, people want their toys back, right? They want their spouse back or their girlfriend or their boyfriend. People want their rights back because the law stepped in and took their rights away, so they want their rights back. People want their possessions back. People want a witness so they can tell their sad stories to. And my story's sad. I didn't get into it. I made a reference to the sexual abuse, but the sexual abuse was actually one of the most mild things in my childhood. It's not why I got high. I got high because it felt great, and I'm f***ing selfish. That's why I got high. That's why I was putting a needle in my arm. It wasn't because someone touched my naughty spot, right? Oprah got raped by her own uncle. How come she wasn't smoking crack? She's helped tens of millions of people, inspired probably 1 billion people over the course of her career. Just because bad shit happens to you doesn't give you the excuse or the right to go and I'm speaking to myself. If you're suffering from addiction, please don't take this harshly, but I got high because I was awake and I'm selfish. So when I saw the miracles begin to happen in my own life and the physical health and the vibrancy returned to my body, I became obsessed with it, and I started making smoothies and juices for the people at Riviera Recovery. And those that wanted help, even some of the ones that didn't want help, to be honest with you, they would change in front of my eyes. I mean, I saw people quit smoking cigarettes after, you know, many, many years. I saw people get off their psychiatric medication, which I'm not suggesting to anybody. This is not medical advice, but I literally watch people like me. When I bottomed out, I was on trazodone, Lexapro, Wellbutrin, Seroquel, and God knows what else. Highly, highly medicated and suffering from mental illness. I don't take any of that shit. No pharmaceuticals today. So I saw the miracles happening at Riviera Recovery. I was really good at making smoothies. I mean, like I said earlier, I don't have any talents or skills, but I can make a mean smoothie. And and I saw how much people liked the smoothies. And so I had this little fantasy, like, wouldn't it be cool if I, instead of being around all of these people that are not even necessarily interested in getting better, wouldn't it be cool if I could just like make smoothies for regular people? Like, what if regular people weren't 109 pounds with their teeth falling out of their head and a systemic yeast infection and heavy metal poisoning? What if just regular people started drinking the juices and drinking the smoothies? I wonder what happened to them. Like, I wonder what kind of vibrancy and energy they would have. And I saw with my own eyes what would happen. So, and I was, I was still like, I was making money, but it always seemed like the business was going to end tomorrow because it just seemed too good to be true. It felt like the other shoe was going to drop. But I had this fantasy of opening up this juice bar, and I was doing Tony Robbins' Hour of Power every morning, 7 days a week, walking up this, to me it was a mountain. Some people might call it a hill, but I would walk up these mountains and I would do these little exercises and these visualization techniques and these breathing exercises and these walking gratitude lists every single day, no matter what.
Wow.
Every single day. And so the juice bar was a fantasy. It was a dream of mine. I wanted to make it a reality. Writing the book, I Forgot to Die, that was also a fantasy and a dream of mine. Opening a yoga studio was another dream of mine. Traveling the world. Like, I wrote all this stuff down because that's what it said to do in Think and Grow Rich. And that's what Bob Proctor said to do. And I knew that like there probably was some sort of truth to that based on what I had discovered in psychocybernetics and the other books that I was reading. So somebody without intelligence or skills or vocational training or education just started doing these tiny little habits every single day. And eventually I saved up enough money where I was talking to a few different people about like, I want to open up this juice bar. I want to open up this juice bar. I had about 4 people that said that they were going to back me. And right at the 11th hour, as I was standing at the altar, 3 of them ghosted me. One of them went off and started a competing business with my ideas and my recipes. It failed. And one guy was a guy that I had been helping. And he was like, why are you always talking about opening a juice bar? Just open the thing. I'm like, I don't have money like you, dude. And he's like, how much could it possibly cost? I'm like a couple $100,000. So I thought. And he's like, it's a hand of poker. I'll give it to you. You just pay me back. And that's how it started. It started on a shoestring and a prayer.
That's so great, man.
Yeah.
I love these stories. It's like so inspiring to come back to just like the spirit of business and the spirit of how things begin. And it all starts with that intention and that seed.
Yeah.
And
believing.
And a lot of hard work and a lot of luck and a lot of beautiful collaborative energies around the bringing of something to life.
Ethnicity, being half Polish, half Palestinian. I mean, I'm a fire hydrant. I am tough.
I love that.
Not tough.
Yeah.
I'm
You're
resilient. I shouldn't have said I'm tough. I'm resilient.
You're
resilient. You guys, you could both beat me up. I'm resilient. You would beat me up, and then I would get up and I would say, "Let's keep going."
Yeah, and it's a really beautiful thing. Khalil, I got a final kind of wrapping question for you.
Sure.
In the midst of everything you're doing, everywhere you've been, and everywhere you're going, how do you stay grounded on a daily basis?
I'm not grounded. I'm not grounded at all. In my morning routine, although there is some stuff that would resemble somebody that has a good morning routine in there, there is like sauna and there's a cold plunge here and there. My morning routine is garbage. My eyes open at 5 a.m. and that could be spent doom scrolling on Instagram. I'm just being honest. I think there's so much emphasis put on, people having to, have these lofty goals of like, you have to have a cold tub and you have to do this and you have to do that. You don't have to do shit. If you have a dream, you go for it and you walk towards that dream and you make it happen. I'm all over the place. I'm getting on a plane on Friday. I'm going to New York for a couple of days, and then I'm going to Abu Dhabi. I'm going to meet up with my buddy who has a wave pool there, and we're going to go surf with another friend of his. And then we're going to Dubai. I'm going to meet some people about business, and then I'm going to hop on a plane on the 15th and head to South Africa for a couple weeks, talk to some people there about some business. I'm slowly but surely taking little notes here and there to work on my third book. My second book is Remembering to Live. My third book, I don't know what it's going to be called. Lost my mom 4 years ago. Lost my dad maybe 6 months ago, 8 months ago.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
It's life. It's going to happen to all of us.
Yeah.
I'm building my dream home. There's a lot of moving parts there. I would probably be the furthest thing from grounded. I'm present. I'm definitely present. I'm here. I feel you. You know, there's an energy, there's a connection here. So I'm definitely present, but no, I'm all over the place. I mean, I don't know how to stay grounded, nor do I really have a desire to be grounded. I'll close with this. Last week, it was still warm out. It was a beautiful day. I was at SunLife. I was like, man, you know what? I'm going to lay by my pool. We have a really cool place in Zilker, right by Barton Springs. I'm like, I'm going to go home and I'm lay by my pool. And got my fancy car and I drove over there. When I pulled up, I saw my girlfriend's car. I'm like, oh, that's so weird. She's like barely ever takes a day off. Like, so cool. I go inside. I look, she's laying out by the pool. I'm like, oh my God, this is perfect. And run upstairs. I put on my trunks, come downstairs, bring out my headphones, and I got my phone, I got my playlist, and I go outside, and I was like, so I think you'll come to South Africa. You can meet me like on the 18th or whatever. My girlfriend literally just goes like this. She doesn't even open her eyes. She doesn't even look at me. She just goes like this. She puts her hand up like that. That means take your bombastic, ungrounded, crazy creativity and all of your dreams and plans and designs and go somewhere else. Not in a mean way. I was like, oh, I grabbed my towel. I went to the front yard. We have a lounge chair in the front yard too. And I laid in the sun, and one of my cats came and joined me, sat in between my legs, and I'm petting my cat. And about 45 minutes later, I felt a gentle kiss on my forehead. Look up, it's my girlfriend. There's no explanation. There's no, I'm sorry, because there's no reason to apologize. She was having a peaceful moment, and I interrupted that peaceful moment because I'm selfish and I'm still a little boy in some regards, trapped inside this old man's body. And I wanted to talk and I wanted to be seen. But it was one of the few days that she had taken off in a really long time. And it was so awesome. She kissed me on the forehead and she walked away, and I looked back at the cat and I'm like, man, it's late. It's late in life. It's late in life. But I feel like I'm starting to understand it a little bit. I feel like I'm starting to understand it a little bit. Find somebody who understands and accepts your imperfections, and somebody who you can understand and accept their imperfections quietly, and work hard and save your money and invest your money and create some stability and some prosperity and some abundance, and be kind to people and help people. And I think I'm starting to get it.
I think you're doing all right.
Thank you.
Khalil, it's so great to get to know you in this way, man. Really
Thank you,
grateful
Raj.
that we had a chance to drop in like this. And
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to more hangs
Yes.
and friendships just blossoming as a
Thank you,
result of
brother.
this. Yeah.
Thank you.
Everybody, that's a wrap for this week's episode of Stay Grounded. I'm your host, Raj. This is your new friend, Khalil. And from us, stay grounded. We'll chat soon.
Thanks for tuning into this week's episode of Stay Grounded. No matter where you're from or what you're going through, I hope it helps you remember just how incredible you are and have always been. If you're on a path of emotional healing or self-discovery and would like to learn how Liberate can support your journey, head to www.rajana.com/liberate. That is LIBER8 to learn more about our current group programs and one-on-one offerings. I love you guys, and I'll see you next week.